There are some significant things happening in the world of Medicare, specifically MA right now, that we need to talk about. It's really a signal about where the program is headed. And it's not necessarily a negative thing. In fact, I would argue it's a positive thing because these changes don't just have to happen, they need to happen, right? So several major insurers have recently agreed to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements related to how Medicare Advantage payments are calculated. By the way, I had a nice carrier rep friend who told me he really appreciated when I told him how long these videos were. This is Zan solving Medicare, probably 5 minute, right? So we had Kaiser who came in and was hit with the largest settlement any MA insurer has been hit with yet. It's over $500 million they had to pay. Aetna just agreed to pay back a little over $117 million to resolve allegations that inaccurate diagnosis codes had inflated payments for their Medicare program. And then you've seen other large insurers like Humana and United Healthcare that have also faced the same investigations and litigation tied to the same issue in recent years. And the question isn't whether they're guilty or not. The question is, why is this happening? So to understand why, we need to really get an idea of how Medicare Advantage plans really get paid. So unlike traditional Medicare, where the government is paying physicians and hospitals for each service, Medicare Advantage works through a capitated payment model. The federal government pays insurers a fixed monthly payment per member per month based on several things like income level, diagnosis level, zip code. You guys get the idea. But that payment changes depending on how sick the population is. And that's really what I want to jump into today. So the adjustment's called risk adjustment scores. Plans submit a diagnosis code for their members based on how sick they are. Those diagnoses increase a patient's risk score, and the higher the risk score, the higher the payment then Medicare will send to that insurance carrier that's hosting that patient for that year. Now, the system exists for a reason. Without it, MA insurers would have very strong incentive to enroll only the healthiest patients and ignore anyone who is sick, right? Risk adjustment then is designed to prevent that very thing from happening. However, it also creates an incentive to document as many diagnoses as possible because now the carrier will be more financially rewarded for that. Federal investigators have argued in several of these cases that some of the plans have submitted unsupported or at least inaccurate at best diagnoses, which have increased their payments from Medicare. That's why we're seeing the DOJ bringing these cases under what they're calling the False Claims Act. It allows the government and any whistleblower that brings this to the federal government to recover funds from Medicare's program that has been billed improperly. And these settlements are getting larger and larger. Like I said, the Kaiser Permanente settlement was a little over $500 million, and they paid it. It's the largest settlement on record so far. But the real story isn't just the settlements that we're seeing. The real story is what's going to follow these settlements. So as we all know, Medicare Advantage has become a massive program. The federal government now pays insurers over $500 billion a year just to provide coverage to MA beneficiaries. When a program becomes that large, we need increased scrutiny, and that's what we're finding. So these congressional investigators and Medicare's own advisory commission, they've raised concerns about the way coding practices may be increasing payment beyond what traditional Medicare would spend on the same patients. In fact, MedPAC had a great article that suggested that MA plans were being reimbursed 20% more than what it would cost if the same member was on traditional Medicare. This is responsible then for tens of billions of dollars more annually for our tax dollars to pay a Medicare Advantage organization rather than traditional Medicare. Now, the program's not going away. We have over 50% of the Medicare population that relies on Medicare Advantage. But the way policymakers are paying closer attention to how these payments are calculated is a red light saying that we're going to see more scrutiny and more tightening of the structure from future pressure. So if the policymakers conclude that MA plans are in fact receiving higher payments than expected, they've got several levers they can pull. They may tighten those risk adjustment models and not pay the same bonus dollar or X dollar percentage amounts for a ESRD patient or a dialysis patient or someone with that takes biologics or infusions. They can adjust these benchmark payments. And then they can attempt to recover overpayments through enforcement actions like we're seeing today with Kaiser and with Aetna. All of these changes will affect the economics of the entire Medicare Advantage market, and the shifts that we're seeing are probably pointing towards that. If those payments then tighten, plans are going to have to adjust. Ideally, they would just reduce their supplemental benefits. They may end up narrowing their networks even more than we're already seeing, or they may increase cost sharing or start adding more premiums to Medicare Advantage plans in general, or they may become more selective in how they operate or commissions that they allow to be paid. Now, once again, let me reinforce this. Medicare Advantage is not disappearing, but the program is absolutely entering a more disciplined phase after these years, a decade of ultra mega rapid expansion. Really, for the past decade, MA has grown quickly and often offered ultra rich benefits with very high compensation, including HRA payments. But when regulators begin recovering hundreds of millions of dollars, that increased scrutiny on payments is signaling something really important. The government is looking very carefully at how the MA system works. And when the payment environment tightens, the entire structure of Medicare Advantage has to evolve. So the next phase then of Medicare Advantage may look a lot different than the previous phase. We don't know where things are headed, though we can probably point at some ideals. Now, the program is not failing. That's not what I'm getting at. But it is large enough that policymakers want to make sure that the payment system is working exactly as it was originally intended, and it's not some type of financial incentive to upcode people to prop up an insurance carrier. The moment we're entering right now, though, is going to tell us a lot about what we should expect for AEP 2027.